Good evening, friends. Today's top medical news features a landmark $2.7 million gene therapy FDA approval, a critical debate on the cardiovascular inflammatory hypothesis, and an exponential surge in global public health crises. The Clinical Briefing, August 21, 2026. Welcome back to the Clinical Briefing, your daily scientific update for healthcare professionals. Today is Friday, August 21, 2026. We are breaking down the biggest therapeutic, regulatory, and public health shifts impacting your practice this week. Here are today's top headlines. Gene therapy breakthrough. The FDA has greenlit glycose, the first ever corrective therapy for glycogen storage disease type Ia, hitting the market with a record-setting price tag. The cardiology debate. Proponents of the cardiovascular inflammatory hypothesis doubled down after the high-profile Zeus trial flop. AI regulation. The FDA opens docket FDA 2026 N7874, proposing a revolutionary competency assessment framework for generative AI in clinical care. Global health crisis. The United Nations warns of an exponential, underfunded Ebola surge in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Journal ethics. The JAMA network enforces strict new bans on generative AI in peer-reviewed manuscripts. Let's dive deep into the data. Segment 1: Regulatory Frontiers and Rare Disease Therapeutics. Our top story today lands in the metabolic and rare disease sector. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has officially granted accelerated approval to Ultragenyx Pharmaceuticals' glycose, paraglashgene brexaparvovecapmer. This marks a historic milestone as the first ever gene therapy designed to treat the underlying cause of glycogen storage disease type Ia, GSDIA. For decades, management of GSDIA has been notoriously brutal for patients and endocrinologists alike. The missing enzyme, glucose 6-phosphatase, prevents glycogen breakdown, leading to life-threatening hypoglycemia. Patients have been bound to a relentless, lifelong regimen of precisely timed oral raw cornstarch therapy to maintain euglycemia. Glycose aims to rewrite that paradigm. Delivered via a single intravenous infusion, this AAV-based gene therapy delivers a functional copy of the human G6PC gene directly to hepatocytes, restoring endogenous glucose production. Let's look at the data that secured this regulatory nod. In its 48-week, randomized, double-blind late-stage clinical trial, patients treated with glycose demonstrated a statistically and clinically significant reduction in daily cornstarch requirements compared to the placebo cohort. However, clinicians should note that the FDA categorized cornstarch reduction as a surrogate endpoint. Because of this, accelerated approval is conditional. Ultragenyx is mandated to complete ongoing confirmatory trials, providing a minimum of 2 years of robust post-market safety and efficacy data to secure traditional approval. Now, let's talk about the clinical and economic logistics. The manufacturer has announced a U.S. per-patient list price of $2.7 million, positioning it among the most expensive single-dose therapeutics in the world. On screen now are the structural points you need to know for clinical rollout. Therapeutic class, adeno-associated virus, AAV, vector gene therapy. Target indication, patients aged 8 years and older with confirmed GSDIA. Clinical endpoints, demonstrated significant drop in exogenous oral glucose dependence. Commercial availability, rollout is expected within the next 30 to 60 days via highly specialized, qualified metabolic treatment centers. While competitors like Moderna and Beam Therapeutics are actively chasing this indication with early-stage candidates, glycose holds a massive first-mover advantage. For your patients with severe GSDIA, this completely redefines their long-term prognosis. Segment 2: Cardiovascular Medicine and the Inflammation Controversy. Turning to cardiovascular medicine, a massive ideological battle is brewing in peer-reviewed circles following the recent data release of the Zeus trial. For years, the cardiovascular community has been divided over the inflammatory hypothesis of atherogenesis. Proponents argue that targeting systemic inflammation independently lowers major adverse cardiovascular events, or MACE, even in patients with well-controlled LDL cholesterol. Skeptics, however, have questioned whether the risk reduction justifies the therapeutic burden. The ZEUS trial evaluated an anti-inflammatory monoclonal antibody targeting interleukin-6. To the disappointment of many, the trial officially flopped, failing to meet its primary efficacy endpoints for MACE reduction. Despite this high-profile failure, proponents of the inflammatory hypothesis remain completely undaunted. Leading cardiologists arguing across platforms like Medscape stress that a single failed trial does not invalidate an entire physiological paradigm. They emphasize that atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease is highly heterogeneous. The consensus building today suggests that future research must shift from broad anti-inflammatory targeting to highly precise patient stratification. The focus is now on identifying distinct inflammatory phenotypes using advanced biomarkers, ensuring that the right patient receives the right targeted biologic. For clinicians on the ground, this means that while regular hsCRP monitoring remains a vital tool for risk stratification, we are still waiting for a definitive, universally effective anti-inflammatory blockbuster to add to our daily guideline-directed medical therapies. 2026 Dyslipidemia Guideline. Concurrently, the latest JAMA Network publications have highlighted the rollout of the 2026 Dyslipidemia Guidelines for primary prevention. These updated guidelines have significantly lowered lipid treatment goals, raising the clinical bar for primary care providers and cardiologists alike. If you are managing primary prevention patients with borderline cardiovascular risk, the threshold for initiating statin and ezetimibe therapy has dropped, putting an even heavier emphasis on early intervention. Segment 3, Digital Health, MedTech, and the FDA's AI crackdown. Our third segment covers the rapidly evolving intersection of artificial intelligence and clinical practice. We are seeing a massive, simultaneous push for regulatory oversight from both federal agencies and major medical journals. First, the regulatory front. The FDA has officially published a highly anticipated discussion paper aimed at shaping the regulatory framework for generative AI-enabled medical devices. The agency is explicitly seeking public and professional feedback under docket FDA 2026 N7874, with a hard submission deadline of October 19, 2026. The proposed FDA competency assessment model, non-clinical benchmarking, clinical confirmation, post-market monitoring. The core of the FDA's new proposal relies on an innovative concept, competency assessment. Rather than evaluating generative AI using rigid, traditional software as a medical device protocols, the FDA is taking a page out of medical residency programs. The framework proposes non-clinical device benchmarking, testing the model's foundational medical knowledge in controlled, simulated environments. Clinical confirmation, real-world validation to prove the tool performs safely and accurately in live patient environments. Risk proportionate post-market monitoring, continuous, real-time auditing of foundation models and agentic AI systems to catch hallucinations or diagnostic drift after deployment. This shift is incredibly timely. A stunning new analysis published this week by researchers tracking medical technologies revealed that out of 1,357 FDA-cleared AI devices, only 3 had formal peer-reviewed testing tracking direct patient outcomes. As hundreds of AI tools flood clinical workflows, the evidence regarding actual patient safety and mortality remains thin. Meanwhile, if you are planning to publish research this year, listen closely. The JAMA Network has enacted a sweeping update to its instructions for authors across all 13 affiliated journals. While earlier guidance required mere disclosure of AI use, this new August 2026 policy completely closes the door on 4 specific categories of AI involvement. There is no disclosure pathway, no exception for minor use, and no room for interpretation. While the full technical brief is restricted to authors, the mandate is clear: the medical establishment is drawing a hard line to protect the integrity of clinical data from unverified algorithmic generation. Segment 4: Global Infectious Disease and Clinical Neurology Updates. We turn now to a severe and escalating international health emergency. The United Nations Senior Ebola Coordinator, Julian Harnias, issued a stark warning that the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo is now spreading exponentially. The data coming out of the region is deeply concerning for global health specialists. Mortality: the official death toll has surged past 2,500 individuals. Geographic scope: the viral transmission zone has expanded exponentially, now covering an area larger than the entire country of France. Funding crisis: humanitarian and medical aid funding is critically depleted, projected to completely run out within the next few weeks unless international donors intervene immediately. On the ground reality: international medical teams are facing severe operational hurdles, driven by an unacceptable series of physical attacks on healthcare workers. For infectious disease specialists and public health officials worldwide, the exponential nature of this spread highlights a critical vulnerability in global pandemic readiness and underscores the urgent need for stabilizing healthcare infrastructure in conflict zones. Switching focus to clinical neurology, a major diagnostic breakthrough was published today in neuroimmunology, specifically regarding multiple sclerosis, MS. A new long-term cohort study has confirmed that retinal thinning can actively predict subsequent cognitive decline in patients with multiple sclerosis, completely independent of their clinical relapse activity. Researchers utilized optical coherence tomography, or OCT, to measure specific structural boundaries at baseline. Here is the clinical breakdown of the findings. PRNFL and M-simple thinning. At baseline, a marked thinning of the parapapillary retinal nerve fiber layer and the macular ganglion cellular plexiform layer directly correlated with a multi-year decline in overall cognitive function. Thicker MINL. Conversely, a thicker macular inner nuclear layer at baseline was strongly linked to a progressive worsening in a patient's cognitive processing speed. Thinner MINL. Interestingly, a thinner baseline MINL predicted a specific decline in verbal learning and memory capacity. For neurologists managing MS, this data provides a highly accessible, non-invasive biomarker. By embedding regular retinal OCT scans into your standard objective clinical tracking, you can effectively anticipate and manage cognitive trajectories long before overt clinical decline manifests. Segment 5: Quick Clinical Roundup. Time for our daily quick clinical roundup, rapid fire updates changing daily practice. First, in oncology, researchers writing in the Journal of Medicinal Chemistry have announced the rational development of an activatable prodrug targeting the GSTP1 inhibitor index. This smart oncology agent leverages near-infrared fluorogenic drug delivery to selectively target malignant cells, significantly sparing healthy tissue and paving the way for targeted treatments that could dramatically reduce traditional systemic chemotherapy toxicities. Surgical robotic automation. In medical devices, the FDA has officially authorized ELETA, a first-of-its-kind, standalone robotic blood draw device. Operating entirely without hands-on human intervention, the device is authorized for outpatient adult settings under the oversight of a trained phlebotomy supervisor. Crucially, a single clinician can oversee up to 3 Aletta devices simultaneously, offering a scalable technological buffer to combat severe institutional phlebotomist shortages. Wearable device market projections. Furthermore, an exhaustive industry market report released today projects that the global wearable medical device software market will skyrocket from $10.40 billion in 2026 to a massive $31.59 billion by 2031. This explosive expansion is driven heavily by continuous glucose monitoring systems, expanded clinical workflow integration, and AI-enabled risk scoring, with remote patient monitoring accounting for over a quarter of the entire market share. Gastroenterology breakthrough. Finally, in gastroenterology, the FDA has officially granted pre-market approval to Implantica's Reflux Stop, an innovative, implant-based non-active device for the treatment of severe gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD. Backed by robust 5-year long-term safety data, this approval marks its official commercial launch into the U.S. market, offering a powerful surgical alternative for patients refractory to maximum proton pump inhibitor therapy. Cruciferous vegetables. Do you avoid cruciferous vegetables because of problems with gas? Cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, and kale, for example, are high in vitamin C, beta-carotene, fiber, calcium, iron, and folate. Many are also high in vitamin A and vitamin K as well as low in calories. Some studies have shown they may also reduce your cancer risk. Don't avoid these vegetables. Just add them to meals gradually, in smaller servings. Drinking plenty of fluids may help too, WebMD. Age at first menstruation and the timing of menopause provide valuable insight into future cerebrovascular risk because these milestones reflect cumulative exposure to endogenous estrogen, which plays a critical role in vascular health and metabolic regulation. Both early and late reproductive transitions have been associated with adverse cardiovascular outcomes, making reproductive lifespan a consideration during long-term risk evaluation. Menstrual cycle regularity is not considered a major independent predictor of stroke risk in most patients. Outro and community engagement. That wraps up today's edition of the Clinical Briefing for Friday, August 21, 2026. Before you head back to your clinics or labs, let's open up our daily clinical forum in the comments below. Given the massive $2.7 million list price for the newly approved glycose gene therapy, how is your institution navigating insurance hurdles and formulary approvals for ultra-orphan drugs? And for the neurologists watching, are you already utilizing retinal OCT scans to track disease progression in your MS clinics, or will this new data change your baseline diagnostic protocols? Drop your perspectives and clinical experiences in the comments below. Let's get a rigorous peer-to-peer discussion going. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and click the bell icon to ensure you never miss your daily scientific briefing. All clinical study links, official FDA dockets, and trial data are fully cited in the video description below. Thank you for your time, thank you for your dedication to patient care, and we will see you right here tomorrow. Disclaimer: compiled information. This content is for educational purposes and is not a substitute for professional advice. The audience must verify the contents before use. The creator, publisher, and YouTube will not be responsible for any harm.